What is the job of your main characters? What do they have to accomplish in your story, and how can we start figuring out those kind of connections and roles? So hopefully you already have some character basics for your main character. And knowing the foundation of your characters is very important. Their description, their age, their personality, background, life, all of that stuff will help bring your character to life while you're writing them on the page. But the most important part about your character is the stuff that will influence the plot of your story. So the first thing that we're going to talk about that's going to basically be the main theme today is the character motivation. So if your main character doesn't have any goals, why are they even in your book, right? There has to be something that is pushing them forward, that is making them do things that progress your plot along. If your character doesn't do anything, they're boring. Nobody cares about that. Nobody wants to read a book about somebody who's just sitting there not doing anything. There are points where your character may be acted upon, like they get kidnapped or something. They're not doing the action, they're being dragged into the action. But at some point, they have to take control of the situation and they have to start making the decisions and they have to start doing the big important things. All right, so what kind of things drive your character to action? So some of the things to help you figure this out are questions like, what does your character want? What do they think they want? But maybe when it comes down to it, they don't actually want that thing. What do they need different than what they want? What are they willing to do to get it? What are they not willing to do? What do they have to do in order to get it? And your book, your plot, your novel is going to be a series of events preventing your character from getting what they want. The whole time they're like, okay, I got to get this thing. I got to stop this guy. Things are getting in their way. There are obstacles, there are challenges, things they need to overcome. Maybe you have some ideas about what goals your character has. So how do you know if they're strong enough? How do you know if your character motivation and goals is going to want to make the reader go along for that ride? Okay, because you could have a main character whose only goal is to buy some grapes. Okay, that's kind of okay, but like maybe that's not the strong enough motivation to get them to go slay a dragon, you know, unless they're cursed so that the only thing that they want in life is grapes and they'll do anything to get it. But, then it becomes a little bit more interesting. So, how do you know if it's good enough, it's strong enough? Is it something that'll create conflict? Conflict is what you need in your books. It's what we're looking for. It's the most important thing. So, conflicting motivations, if your character has two things that they want that kind of clash, that can create tension and it's a little bit more realistic and interesting. You guys have more than one thing that you want out of life, right? Your only goal is not to, I don't know, wake up out of bed in the morning. I mean, that's a good one. But what's that going to lead to? Like you want to have a certain job, you want to have a certain salary, maybe you want a family, some significant other, maybe you want to travel the world, maybe you want to get really good at playing the guitar. I don't know. All of you are complex beings who have a bunch of different interests and desires, and your main characters need to be just as complex and interesting. So they can't just want one thing out of life. There's got to be a couple of things that they want. And if you kind of put that into your novel and make them kind of have to choose between those things, that can be really great conflict and motivation to drive your plot. All right. So in your character design template that I gave you, you might have noticed that at the bottom, it says this: nothing is more important than X except for Y. For most of you, I told you to just skip that because we're going to talk about that today. But basically, this is what this means. When you reach the climax of your story, your characters should be choosing between two different things that they want. So this is a moment where they have to sacrifice one of these things that they really wanted in order to bring to pass this more important thing. All right. So nothing is more important to your character than, something at the beginning of the story. Maybe all they care about is their farm. Nothing's more important than keeping their farm alive. But then as they go on this adventure and they learn more things and they get kind of opened up to this bigger picture of the world, something else becomes more important to them. Okay, maybe saving the people of the town nearby. All right, so then maybe they have to end up sacrificing their farm in order to save these people for the greater good. So I have an example, which, no surprise, it's from Lord of the Rings. Just like a quick little, to see this in action. So Frodo is our main character in Lord of the Rings. So for him, nothing is more important than the Shire, his hometown where he lives, than stopping Sauron. So at the beginning, he doesn't even know that this dude exists. He's just loving life, living it up in his little town. And then the ring comes into his possession, the One Ring of Power, and Gandalf asks him to take it to the elves. Okay, so first, Frodo's like, okay, fine. I can go on a little adventure. I can leave my home for a month and go take this ring to the elves. So he does that. And then he's like, okay, now we're done. I can go home after this. But then he kind of realizes that this ring is more dangerous than he thought. It's causing all of these people to fight. No one's coming to a decision. So he steps up and he volunteers to take it to Mordor. Okay, so he's sacrificed his home just a little bit longer to go on this longer journey. But he thinks that there's this whole team of people, this fellowship beside him that is going to go the entire way with him. So right now he's like, okay, so I have to take it a little bit farther. I know it's going to be scary and dangerous, but I've got all these people backing me up and I'm going to make it home. I'm going to get back to my Shire and this is great. Okay, then at the end of book 1, the team falls apart and he realizes that he has to do this by himself. So he's making another sacrifice. It's getting harder and harder. His motivations are shifting a little bit more. This is really important. I need to get this done. The only way I can do this is if I go by myself. And then at the very end of book 3, he realizes he can't go back home. This is going to kill him. He's got to sacrifice his life and everything he loves to get back, or to kill Sauron, to destroy the ring. And so he kind of gives up that dream that he always had of going back home to the Shire. For your characters, decide, kind of like come up with some ideas. What, at the beginning of their story, what's the most important thing for them? And then what is going to come into their life that they realize is more important? What are they going to have to sacrifice to make that more important thing a reality? Okay. So after that, one of the most important things to decide about your character is what you want them to learn along the way. Your character has to grow and change. They can't just stay static and boring the whole time. They have to grow. We want to go on this journey. They are going to leave the house an innocent young farm boy, and they're going to come back a dragon slaying knight or something, right? Character development, they've got to grow and change. So what is it that you want your character to become at the end of their story? And that'll help you figure out steps along the way to get them there. So this is called the character arc. This is the internal journey that your character goes on. The changes that they make within themselves, personality, they learn more stuff, they become more wise, they get some trauma along the way, how does it change them as a person? And this is the foundation of your plot. Your whole plot is structured around your main character, how they're learning and growing and changing. So you need to ask yourself, what personal journey will this character go on? How will they grow and change? And what lessons will they learn? This is kind of like the theme of your story. Like what? I'm trying to think of an example. Not very good at this off the top of my head, but it might be like at the beginning, your character is like really shy and they're not willing to break out of their shell because they're like, oh, I'm just like one person and I'm weak and I don't know a lot. What difference can I make in the world? So I might not even try. Okay, might not as well try because there's nothing that I can do. Okay, but then they go on this journey and they realize that they have something amazing that they can contribute to the world or to like the army or whatever it is that's happening. And it's that little piece that they find in themselves that saves the day at the end. Okay, so 3 things that you want to make sure you have. First off, at the beginning of the book, you are giving your readers a promise. They read the first couple of chapters and they're like, okay, this author is promising me a story about XYZ. Okay, they've given me this character. I know their flaws, I know their insecurities, and so by the end of the book, that's going to change. By the end of the book, this timid little farm boy is gonna become something greater. Okay. So what is this character lacking at the beginning of the book? Where do they want to go? Do they have dreams and ambitions? You know, and then where do you want them to go? That's important. So where do your characters want to go? Where do you want them to go? That'll all kind of build into there. As you're writing the book, the beginning, the middle, the end, the whole thing, it's progression. How are they going to achieve that thing? What are the steps along the way to get there? That's kind of like the hard part, is figuring all that out. They have to earn their ending, okay? So it can't be an easy jaunt down the garden path. It has to be trials and tribulation and monsters and scary things that they're going to have to overcome to get the payoff at the end, which is, okay, here were their dreams. They went and they did all of these trials, and now they have this reward at the end. It might not be what they expected. It might not be what your readers expected, but it has to be some kind of fulfillment of the promise that you made at the beginning. So your characters end up where either they wanted to be or where they needed to be, didn't realize that's where they needed to be. So where do your characters start? Where do you want them to end? How are you going to get them there? Okay, so this is kind of like a little acronym to kind of help you maybe remember the little steps of the character arc. Is dream. I learned this from somebody else. I did not come up with this. So at the beginning, your character denies that there's a problem. They're happy in their little bubble in their life. They want to stay there. They're in their comfort zone. Yay. Then they resist participating in this thing. This is often the call to action, which we'll talk about more. So something happens in their life that's like, crazy things are happening and changing, and you need to come help stop this. And your character is usually like, whoa, hold up there. I am not prepared for this. I am not ready. I'm not the one that you need. So either they're verbally actually saying, nope, don't bring me, or it's like an internal, they've got insecurities. They're like, okay, I guess I'll come help, but I don't really believe in myself. And then they explore the options. They start to open up to it a little bit, and they're like, okay, maybe I can help in some small way. Maybe I will participate a little bit. And then they finally accept it, and they're like, okay, you know what? We got to get this done. I am taking control of this situation. And they kind of step into this role that they needed to kind of step into at the beginning. They were resisting it along the way, and they finally accept that they are the main character of this story, and they are going to save the day. And then at the end, the manifest. This is basically the fruition of this kind of journey. They've put in the effort at this point, and now they're taking the action needed to get the reward at the end. Okay, so these are just some like random little things that I thought could be useful to throw in here for you guys. So right before the climax of your story, there's a point where either the character gets everything that they wanted and it's a disaster. So they either get everything that they want and it falls apart for some reason, or they don't get everything they want and they have this moment of really deep despair. They give up. They're like, bad guy's gonna win. There's nothing more we can do. Okay, so right before the climax, there's kind of a terrible moment of darkness. The dark night of the soul is what we authors usually refer to it as. And then, you know, they turn it around and they defeat the bad guy, and yay, that's the climax. Okay, the tragic flaw. Every good character has a flaw, okay? It's not always the funnest to read about a character who's perfect in every single way, okay? Superman, I mean, he's cool, but like, he didn't freaking do anything. He's kind of perfect, right? And so Superman can sometimes be boring to people because he's freaking the best guy and he has all of these powers and he's really attractive and whatever, you know? So the best characters, the ones that people love the most, have some flaw that they're, you know, kind of working to overcome. So maybe they want something too much and they follow that even though it burns their life down around them. You know, they're loyal to a fault, or, you know, they really want this treasure and they're going to do it even if they sacrifice their friends along the way. So as you're following along this journey of your character, it's good to use a lot of like, yes, they get this thing, but it comes with consequences. So they accomplish the thing that they want, but even though they're accomplishing these things, everything's still getting worse and worse and worse until it leads to a climax. All right. Also, sideways character arc. Your character doesn't necessarily have to be learning something new, okay? They can just be becoming someone different. So they could have all of these skills and abilities and wisdoms, and instead of like learning something new, like, oh my gosh, this huge revelation about myself that I didn't know, it could just be, I was a bad guy at the beginning of this book, but now I'm a good guy. I see things differently. I've changed. So that works just as well. And then you can kind of look for events and choices that your character might make that'll lead your character along and will force them into action. Start to hash out ideas for your character's arc. Where are they at the beginning of the story? Where do you want them to be at the end of the story? Not physically, okay? Yeah, you want them to fight dragons or whatever, but as a person, as an individual, their personality, their hopes, their dreams, what do they need to experience, change, grow, become along the way? And then think of potential conflicts that will keep them from achieving their goals.